Shortly after takeoff, an Airbus A321, carrying 186 passengers and 7 crew members, encountered a significant crisis. The crew received a concerning alert on the ECAM, indicating a problem with the oil quantity in one of the engines. As the situation intensified, the pilots were compelled to respond swiftly and decisively while navigating over the North Atlantic Ocean, facing limited options and a dwindling time frame. The atmosphere in the cockpit grew increasingly tense. Would the pilots successfully manage this critical situation and land the aircraft safely, or would this challenge prove insurmountable? This is the account of UOW Air Flight 117. On November 1, 2018, preparations for Flight 117 were underway. The ground crew was diligently loading luggage and cargo into the aircraft, ensuring that all items were securely stowed. This scheduled flight from Keflavik Airport in Iceland to Baltimore, Maryland, typically spans approximately 6 hours, traversing the North Atlantic Ocean and passing over Greenland and Canada before arriving in the United States. The aircraft designated for this journey is a 2017 manufactured Airbus A321, equipped with 2 CFM engines. Between October 15 and October 28, the aircraft underwent a C-check inspection at Adria Tanica in Ljubljana Airport, Slovenia. At the time of this inspection, the Airbus had accumulated over 7,000 flight hours and nearly 1,700 flight cycles. A C-check is a thorough examination that occurs approximately every 20 to 24 months, or after a specified number of flight hours or cycles. This inspection entails a comprehensive review of numerous aircraft components, necessitating the aircraft to be taken out of service for a detailed assessment. The inspection process involved a thorough examination of the aircraft's structural components, engines, landing gear, and other essential systems, which may take 1 to 2 weeks to complete, depending on the specific aircraft and the scope of the required work. During this period, necessary repairs, replacements, or upgrades are performed to ensure compliance with all safety and operational standards. Following the completion of the C-check, the aircraft successfully undertook 13 flight legs without any issues. Prior to each flight, one of the pilots conducts a pre-flight inspection to confirm the aircraft's safety and readiness for the upcoming journey. On this occasion, the captain carried out the inspection, beginning with a comprehensive walk-around to assess the wings and control surfaces for any signs of damage or obstruction. The landing gear was meticulously examined for tire condition, brake integrity, and potential hydraulic leaks, ensuring that all components were functioning optimally. Subsequently, the engines were inspected for leaks, damage, or foreign objects, with all panels confirmed to be securely fastened. Although the captain did not observe any irregularities during the inspection, an undisclosed issue remained hidden beneath the surface. Inside the cockpit, the crew verified the proper functioning of all flight controls, instruments, and navigation systems. They also ensured that emergency equipment, including fire extinguishers, oxygen masks, and life vests, was present and in satisfactory condition. Once all safety checks were completed, the captain authorized boarding, confident in the aircraft's readiness for a safe journey. A total of 186 passengers boarded the aircraft, comprising a diverse group of families, business travelers, and tourists. As they settled into their seats, some engaged in lively conversations while others gazed out the windows, oblivious to the events that lay ahead. The flight crew included 2 pilots and 5 cabin attendants. The captain, aged 45, boasted 8,500 flying hours, with over 4,000 of those as a captain. His co-pilot, 43 years old, had accumulated more than 2,500 flying hours. For this flight, the captain took on the role of monitoring pilot, while the co-pilot operated as the flying pilot. After completing the necessary pre-flight checks, the aircraft was pushed back from the gate. The ground crew confirmed that all systems were functioning properly, and once cleared, the pilot initiated the engines. They then taxied towards the runway, carefully maneuvering through the bustling airport. During this time, the cabin attendants conducted safety demonstrations to ensure that all passengers were familiar with the safety protocols. Following a brief taxi, the Airbus reached runway 28. The weather conditions at the airport were predominantly cloudy, with intermittent light to moderate rain, and temperatures fluctuated between 4 and 7 C. Winds were blowing from the south to southeast at speeds ranging from 14 to 32 km/h. At 3:48 p.m. local time, the crew received takeoff clearance. The co-pilot advanced the thrust levers, and the engines roared to life as the aircraft began its acceleration down the runway. Moments later, Flight 117 took off, embarking on its journey to Baltimore. Inside the cockpit, the pilots maintained a sharp focus on their instruments, ensuring a smooth ascent as the aircraft climbed into the sky. The aircraft ascended steadily, piercing through the clouds, while the flight crew conducted their post-takeoff and climb checks. Everything seemed normal, as both the crew and passengers adjusted to the flight. However, a few minutes later, upon reaching an altitude of 7,000 feet, the flight crew received an advisory notification on their electronic centralized aircraft monitor, ECAM. Upon reviewing the ECAM, they discovered that the oil quantity for engine number 2 had decreased to a mere 3 quarts. Prior to departure, both engines had approximately 18 and 12 quarts of oil, indicating a concerning loss of 15 and 9 quarts. The oil pressure registered at 46 psi, while the oil temperature was recorded at 63.5 C. Despite the significant reduction in oil quantity, other parameters appeared to be within normal limits. For clarity, it is important to note that 1 quart is equivalent to 0.946 liters. The quart is a unit of volume commonly used in the United States for measuring liquids, including oil, which is essential for lubricating the engine's moving components. Insufficient oil can lead to increased friction, resulting in rapid wear and overheating of the engine parts. The crew proceeded with the climb while consulting the Quick Reference Handbook, QRH, which instructed them to closely monitor the oil pressure and temperature for any sudden fluctuations that might signal further issues. Minutes later, as the aircraft ascended past 11,000 feet, the oil quantity for engine number 2 fell to 0. Concurrently, the Electronic Centralized Aircraft Monitoring (ECAM) system displayed 2 X marks in place of the oil quantity reading for that engine. The flight crew initially speculated that a sensor malfunction might be the cause, as both oil pressure and temperature readings appeared stable. However, approximately 30 seconds later, the oil pressure for engine number 2 began to decline, leading the crew to determine that an oil leak was present. During the C-check, technicians inadvertently adhered to the top-line headers of the maintenance instructions rather than following the detailed procedures outlined in the Airbus Aircraft Maintenance Manual, AMM. This oversight resulted in the premature installation of the oil filter element, which hindered the necessary inspection and alignment checks to ensure that the filter locator pin was properly seated. Over time, vibrations from the engine caused the filter element to shift, exacerbating any misalignment and potentially creating a gap. Furthermore, contrary to the AMM guidelines, the black O-ring was incorrectly placed on the drain plug instead of the filter cover. This misplacement resulted in a gap that diminished the effectiveness of the torque applied to the drain plug. As the aircraft continued to operate, vibrations further displaced the filter element, worsening the situation. The culmination of these errors ultimately resulted in the oil leak. The declining oil pressure in engine number 2 triggered a low-pressure warning on the ECAM. The captain and co-pilot swiftly assessed the situation, relying on their training and the clear directives in the manual, which indicated that engine number 2 needed to be shut down. To avert catastrophic failure, it is crucial to shut down an engine promptly in the event of an oil leak. This action is essential to mitigate severe mechanical damage, lower the risk of fire, and adhere to aviation safety regulations. By taking this precaution, pilots can maintain control and ensure the safety of the aircraft, effectively managing the situation until a safe landing can be achieved. As the engine noise changed, passengers began to express their anxiety, prompting flight attendants to move through the cabin to reassure them that the situation was under control. The Airbus A321 exemplifies remarkable engineering, capable of flying safely even if one of its 2 engines fails. This capability is attributed to the aircraft's design, which allows the remaining engine to generate sufficient power to keep the plane in the air and enable effective control by the pilot. However, continuing the flight to Baltimore was not feasible, as flying for an additional 5.5 hours on a single engine presented a considerable risk. Consequently, the captain opted to return to the nearest suitable airport to prioritize the safety of all passengers and crew. This decision was made to minimize the potential for further complications. At 4:06 p.m., the captain declared a pan-pan emergency and informed air traffic control of the shutdown of engine number 2. The challenge was that they had just taken off, leaving the fuel tanks nearly full, which complicated the landing process. The crew began devising a plan, one option being to circle near the airport to burn off fuel and reduce the aircraft's weight prior to landing. However, this option was not without its challenges. The option to remain airborne was dismissed due to the extended duration it would necessitate, which would further elevate the risks associated with operating on a single engine. Consequently, the decision was made to execute an immediate overweight landing to prioritize the safety of all individuals on board. Unlike larger wide-body jets, the Airbus A321 lacks a fuel dumping system, a feature commonly found in aircraft, such as the Boeing 747 or the Boeing 777. This system enables pilots to release fuel while in flight, thereby reducing the aircraft's weight for emergency landings. In the case of the A321, the absence of this system required the crew to manage the situation without the option of fuel dumping, leading them to prepare for an overweight landing. Overweight landings carry considerable risks, including heightened stress on the landing gear, extended landing distances, and the potential failure of braking and landing systems. If not properly managed, these risks could result in structural damage or accidents. Pilots receive extensive training in simulators, where they practice handling various emergencies, including overweight landings. These high-fidelity simulators accurately replicate the aircraft's behavior under diverse conditions, allowing pilots to experience and manage landing dynamics with excess weight. This training is an essential component of their overall emergency preparedness and is included in both initial and recurrent training programs. Despite the challenging circumstances, the crew demonstrated exceptional professionalism. They maintained effective communication with air traffic control and kept passengers informed, working diligently to ensure a safe landing as the aircraft approached. The crew aboard the aircraft in Keflavik activated their emergency protocols, with the captain assuming the role of pilot. The captain modified the approach trajectory towards runway 19, while the first officer liaised with air traffic control to ensure that emergency services were prepared to assist if necessary. The aircraft descended steadily, and the crew adhered to the procedures for an overweight landing. The captain made precise adjustments to the approach speed and descent rate to accommodate the additional weight from the full fuel tanks. This increased weight necessitated a slower and more deliberate descent to prevent overstressing the airframe. The flaps were deployed to ensure optimal lift and control as the aircraft neared the final stages of descent, with the flaps fully extended to maximize lift and drag. The landing gear was lowered, and as they approached the runway, the captain employed the speed brakes to enhance drag and effectively reduce the aircraft's speed. As the runway came into view, the tension within the cabin was palpable. Although the passengers had been briefed by the crew, they could still perceive the gravity of the situation. Nevertheless, the professionalism exhibited by the pilots fostered a quiet confidence among them, reassuring them that they were in capable hands. Moments later, the Airbus made contact with runway 19, executing a firm yet controlled landing. The additional weight extended the landing roll, but the captain adeptly applied the brakes to decelerate the aircraft. The landing gear performed flawlessly, and as the aircraft came to a halt, applause erupted in the cabin, accompanied by an overwhelming sense of relief among the crew and passengers. The composed demeanor and proficient management of the emergency situation facilitated a secure landing. Emergency services promptly examined the aircraft, confirming that it had successfully landed despite being overweight, with no immediate damage observed. After the aircraft was parked at the terminal, an inspection of engine number 2 was conducted, revealing that the interior of the engine cowling was saturated with oil. Additionally, the oil drain plug on the main oil supply filter was found to be loose, accompanied by a loose safety wire. On the evening of November 1 est, further inspections of the oil leak were performed by the flight operator, which included a general examination of engine number 1. This inspection uncovered a second oil leak within the engine cowling, with the same issues identified. The oil drain plug on the main oil supply filter was loose, and the safety wire was also not secured properly. The drain plugs could be easily turned by hand and did not conform to the torque specifications outlined in the Airbus Aircraft Maintenance Manual. In response to this incident, the operator conducted inspections of the drain plugs on all engines within its Airbus fleet that utilized the same drain plug design, discovering issues in 3 aircraft related to this matter. Furthermore, as part of the investigation, Adria Tanica in Slovenia inspected all Airbus aircraft in its hangar that had the same engine oil drain plug installation, uncovering 1 additional loose installation. In light of these findings, Safran Aircraft Engines took proactive safety measures by issuing a revised supply filter through a service bulletin for the CFM engines, aimed at mitigating the risk of improper assembly due to the alignment of the filter element pin. Fortunately, the situation was effectively managed by the skilled actions of the pilots, ensuring a positive outcome despite the challenges faced.